From NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. Economists are expecting a slowdown in hiring and an uptick in the nation's unemployment rate for October to 7.3%. The Labor Department releases the latest figures this morning. NPR's John Itzdy reports the October numbers include the 16-day partial federal government shutdown.
The employment report is a snapshot of labor conditions during 1 week each month, the week that includes the 12th day. That puts the survey week smack in the middle of the government shutdown, when hundreds of thousands of government workers were furloughed. Nevertheless, the survey of businesses that determines job growth will count them as employed because they were paid retroactively. But private government contractors who were laid off could be counted as unemployed and distort the job growth number. The unemployment rate is determined by a separate survey of households. Its different methodology will count many of the furloughed government workers as unemployed. That could artificially push up the unemployment rate. John Itzdy, NPR News, Washington.
An apology from President Obama to those losing their health insurance plans because of the new federal health care law. The president tells NBC News he's sorry some Americans are losing their insurance plans and that he's working to find fixes to allow people to keep them, fixes that don't need congressional approval. Millions of Americans have been receiving cancellation letters from their insurance companies, despite the president having said repeatedly those who like their plans could keep them. President Obama is urging the House to take up a bill passed by the Senate banning discrimination based on sexual orientation. NPR's Ari Shapiro reports House Speaker John Boehner opposes that legislation.
President Obama praised members of the Senate who helped this gay rights measure get beyond the 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. He framed the vote as part of a larger struggle for human rights in America, saying in a written statement, "Just as no one in the United States can lose their job simply because of their race, gender, religion, or a disability, no one should ever lose their job simply because of who they are or who they love." Now the bill must get through the House, where Republicans seem less likely to take it up. In this statement, Obama said one party in one house of Congress should not stand in the way of millions of Americans who want to go to work each day and simply be judged by the job they do. Ari Shapiro, NPR News, the White House.
An EU spokesman says France's foreign minister is joining Secretary of State John Kerry today at talks with Iran amid signs of an emerging deal that would limit Tehran's atomic work. They're dealing with mudslides, falling trees, and power outages in the central Philippines today because of a powerful typhoon. More than 700,000 people were evacuated ahead of the storm. It had top sustained winds of nearly 150 miles per hour when it made landfall. This is NPR News. Calls are growing for Toronto Mayor Rob Ford to resign after he admitted to smoking crack cocaine. As Dan Karpinchuk reports, a new video has surfaced in which the mayor uses profanity and threatening language.
Another video, this one posted by some news websites with content warnings. It shows Ford ranting and swearing. It's the latest surprising event to come this week from a mayor who's already admitted to having smoked crack cocaine. Within hours of it becoming public, the mayor once again emerged from City Hall to speak to reporters. His familiar refrain, he was extremely inebriated. He called the video embarrassing and again made reference to past mistakes. And again, more calls for his resignation. But his continuing refusal to step down has angered many of his colleagues. Now some of them have asked the Ontario government to create legislation to have Ford removed. But the provincial government appears to have little appetite to do so, and even if it did, passing such a law could take months. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpinchuk in Toronto.
Stocks in Asia closed lower today on renewed concerns among investors that the Federal Reserve might begin scaling back its monthly bond-buying stimulus program sooner rather than later. Analysts say investors are also waiting to see today's employment report in the U.S., which is expected to show a slowdown in hiring. Japan's Nikkei index lost more than 1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost more than 0.5%. Shares also finished lower today in South Korea and China. Wall Street is coming off a down day for stocks. The Dow Jones Industrials and the S&P 500 lost ground. The Nasdaq lost nearly 2% to close at 38.57. I'm Dave Mattingly, NPR News in Washington.